Aman Gupta is on the line. Let's get more thoughts from him. He's joining us from Asia-based healthcare communications firm SPAG. Is the company's co-founder and managing partner. Lovely to make the time for us then. Thank you, sir. Scepticism in some quarters. We've seen a lot of it come in over the last 24 hours, but those orders nonetheless are stacking up. So why the difference in reaction from various parts of the world then?
Well, I think, if you look at a vaccine development as a process, there is always the question mark that how can you have a vaccine go through the clinical trial and for a regulatory approval in such a short time. It's not something which we have seen happening in the past. So there would be kind of a skepticism. There will be questions which will sort of come through at this stage. And those questions are also would be around the safety, its efficacy, its amount of immunity, how long that immunity will be there. So from a science perspective, if you look at these are the questions which are still not got answered, as well as the fact that this got a regulatory approval before the clinical phase 3 trial was completed. I think these are some of the questions which, especially in the health and the science community, people need to get answers to before they can really, I would say, celebrate the fact that there is the first vaccine which has got a regulatory approval.
I suppose someone was always going to be first here. I mean, it would be daft for Russia to put something out there and make a big fuss about it, for it to turn out not to be very effective, I suppose. And behind the scenes, the clinicians, the doctors, the researchers, they must have put their good faith behind this. Is it, though, the start of a race downhill, if you get my drift here? Is it going to mean that maybe, and we've yet to see how this vaccine pans out when it's administered in the next couple of months, but, somebody had to be first. But is that going to water down the efficacy of the vaccines coming out, do you think? Or has that got no factor on it at all? The rush to get them out, is that going to make them less effective?
Well, I think it's not so much about the fact that, was it the first one? As you rightly said, some vaccine will be a first one. And there was a kind of a race globally across different institutions to, bring the vaccine out. And it was largely keeping in the mind what the pandemic has caused, to the nations across the world. I think the seriousness of the issue and the urgency was well recognized, and everybody was doing their best to, get a vaccine so that we could at least, go back to a normal life. I think the question largely is that the amount of time which has kind of in between when the initial exploratory to the phase 1 clinical trial. The past, we have seen that it takes much longer time before you could go for a regulatory approval, and from there to manufacturing, quality control, and access. That time is something which has been unheard of.
But does the world have this time? And and what's the worst case scenario, I suppose, if they get it wrong?
Well, I think if it goes wrong, I think that will not really be good for the world at all, because as you just said, there has been and read it in the morning, 1 billion doses have already been ordered from 20 different countries. So you're really putting the lives and the faith and the trust of the people online here. So if something goes wrong, it's something which could really have a kind of a huge contagion impact on the way the whole public health is being seen. And therefore,
which of course is not something Russia's going to do lightly in any shape or form. So they must have behind the scenes some great faith in this. And it's there are more vaccines on the way, I gather, from Russia as well. Is this the starter pistol now then for the race to bring out more around the world? Are we going to see kind of more cooperation, or more people, more countries working alone here?
Well, I think from a public health perspective, it does need a more coordinated efforts from all the different players which are there. It cannot be like a single person trying to race. It's something which needs a coordinated effort. I think it's a kind of a learning if the Russia has come out with something and they have a certain aspects which could help others to bring out maybe vaccines which could work for different genotypes, because it's a complicated science. It's not a simple science.
What are we going to end?
And I think
I was going to say, Emma, what are we going to end up with here? Is it going to be a whole plethora of different vaccines, some more effective than others, or are they going to end up with one, that golden needle at the bottom of the haystack there that's so hard to find? Or is it going to be constantly evolving, like the flu vaccine, if you get me drift? Every other year the flu changes, they've got to tweak the vaccine. How's it going to work in the end, do you think?
Well, I think it's gonna be a kind of, and that's my personal view. I think it's gonna be a kind of, a couple. In the beginning, there will be a lot of vaccines. I think there will be a vaccines with different efficacy. It will be also how many doses do you need? Do you need like a one shot and that should do for life, or do you gonna do get a couple of shots over a period of 1 to 2 years as the efficacy gets built in? So there will be a kind of, couple of them, but over the period of time, as the science further evolves, you will reach a stage which will have like a one vaccine. I don't think it will be like the flu vaccine where every September you have a new strain and you need to go for the next batch of the flu vaccine. I think in this particular case, because it's not really a virus which is sort of mutating too much, we should be okay with 1 or 2 vaccines. It just depends on that, if there's any kind of a genotype variations which needs to be looked into. So I think that's really the future.
Russia's out there first, fingers crossed for everyone around the world, and many more come online and we get over this awful 2020 soon, yeah? All right, Aman Gupta, co-founder and managing partner of healthcare communications firm SPAG. Have a good day. Thanks for being on the programme.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure being here.